Looking for all the latest tips, tricks, updates of what's going on in the recruiting industry, check out the Digital Recruiter Sunday night newsletter. I am not here to blow up your inbox. I don't have enough time to create an email every single day. I once a week send you impactful, a big thing that I've learned this week or realized from working with hundreds of recruiters, owning an agency myself. I'm in the trenches every day like you are, and I'm sharing everything that I'm seeing every Sunday, from content, from automation, from how to get better clients, how to find candidates quicker, how to grow your team, how to hire people, everything in between. The link is in the comments. Sign up today, or you can go to my LinkedIn profile, Clark Wilcox. It's the first link on my feature section. You can sign up there. It's all free. So you get all the tips, everything that you need, free in your inbox every Sunday night. Sign up today. I got LinkedIn content creator extraordinaire, recruiter, talent operator. 40,000 followers now? What do you got? What are you up to?
Yeah, we're just under 40,000, but who's counting?
Just under 40? Okay.
Yep.
No one's counting. No, we don't do that. That's what we talk about. We don't try to go viral. We don't count followers. We never care about that stuff.
That's right. No, not us digital recruiters.
Vanity metrics. No. We would never. We would never. Me, my strong 18,000. So, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good. Staying busy. Things seem to be picking up in the market. I'm on the internal side. I know I have quite a few external buddies who are extremely busy right now, and I know you have a bunch of people that are busy in your sphere of the world. So, yeah, it's I think things are starting to turn around for us recruiters.
Yeah, I think so too, and hopefully there's been some lessons learned from the last couple of years. Although I'm not holding my breath on the grand scale of things, on people not repeating past mistakes and overhiring and all that stuff. But no, I appreciate you coming on here, man. I know you're basically got a lot going on with this internal. I know you're running the whole recruiting department there at Worldly. You're posting every day. You got the people on LinkedIn that are dying to know what you got to say next. You started the newsletter, Talent Operator. You got a lot going on, man. And for those that don't know, I can't tell by the title. Obviously, I'm talking to Andrew Lewis, but I figured most of our listeners already know who you are. Talk to us, like, how'd you get started? Because you and I started recruiting from the same logo at Aerotek.
Uh-huh.
So how'd that come to be in your journey?
Yeah, we both got had by Aerotek, right? They got us right out of. I don't know if you were right out of college. I was right out of college. That seems to be their big power play is they recruit the new grads. But yeah, that was
we don't know any better.
That's exactly right. I mean, looking back at my salary, at what I was being paid at that time, it was kind of rough. But my journey was I actually went to school for exercise physiology. Didn't really have a clear career path. I thought I wanted to do physical therapy just because I was into athletics and training, but didn't really take the right steps to set myself up for success in a highly competitive, cutthroat industry like physical therapy. And so I found myself graduating with a degree, a good internship under my belt, but really I wasn't accepted to ND schools. I wasn't on any wait lists. And so just trying to find a job out of college in the field of exercise physiology. And, I had worked all through college. I worked in banking. I worked in sales. I had really good experience coming out of school, but yet I could not land a job paying $15 an hour out of college in my career field. So I was job searching for, maybe 6 months or so out of school before I finally just said, you know what, I've got way too much experience and skill to be, scraping the bottom of the barrel in this industry. I'm just going to go and tap into my network and see what's out there. And essentially I was referred by a friend who had just gotten hired at Aerotek. She's like, hey, I think you should come check out what we're doing. I don't know if it's for you, but I think you have the right mix of skills for this. So I went and took a tour of Aerotek, did an interview, did a walkthrough, saw that there was a bunch of new college grads. It was an open office concept. Everything looked fun, right? You saw the ping pong tables, you saw the giant coffee machine, you saw all the fun stuff. And so I ended up accepting an offer there. And, to be fully transparent, I really didn't fully know the job description. I didn't really understand what a recruiter did. I remember trying to explain it to my parents, and only knew about half of what I was going to be doing. But I accepted it and jumped right in and got integrated into staffing. And as you know, I think staffing is probably the best place to start if you're a new recruiter because you don't know any better, and it's probably the hardest area of recruitment to get into. Especially for me, I was recruiting for
Mm-hmm.
national accounts, so these were the big logos that no one wanted to work for because they paid so low in really competitive markets. But I cut my teeth there, and that's where everything started. And from there, I moved into more of the internal side, but I can jump into that in a little bit later.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great initial breakdown. As you said, staffing is so hard, and when you don't know any better, man, I feel so blessed looking back on it to have that as my roots with from the skilled trade, the light industrial. As you said, I didn't know any better. I didn't know the JD going into it. I don't even think I told my parents I was starting a new job because I didn't know how to explain it to anyone. I just kind of started it, and then 3 days in, they're like, "You've talked to 20 people. Can 3 of them start to work tomorrow?" And I'm like, maybe, I guess. Right. I had
Right.
3 go to work start on Wednesday or Thursday of my first week. And I was like, all right, I'm in it.
Yep.
It was about $80 in spread. That was about it. But, it was something, right? I was on
Right.
the board.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so you spent the first few months there. I mean, how just kind of building those fundamentals, like when did it start to kind of click? Did it click right away for you? I mean, I know you jumped pretty early to internal, like within a year,
Mm-hmm.
kind
Mm-hmm.
of what gave you even then the confidence of like, all right, I got this. Now I can kind of go leverage my skills elsewhere.
Yeah, I think I've always been able to catch on to things pretty quickly. I guess that is a skill that I have. It also leads to what I would call premature arrogance, right? And so I, like many recruiters, after about 6 months, thought, "All right, I've got it all figured out. Now I can go make tons of money somewhere else," right? And of course, that's never the case, and you learn some hard lessons along the way. But I did feel like I had a good concept of the full recruitment model. I luckily wasn't in a situation where I could just rely on job postings. I was out there having to cold call people, right, that hadn't been talked to in 2 years, 3 years. I hadn't really done much on the business development side, but I was doing, a lot of the really hard recruitment work and, figuring out how to pitch people an opportunity and get them into to the funnel. And so, I attribute my quick move to Hertz actually to my network. This is something that I would, and you know this better than anybody. Your network really is your net worth at the end of the day. And so I've always been somebody that's been a relationship builder. I've always been a connector. I've just known a lot of people and invested in people. And so I actually had a buddy who was working at Robert Half at that time. We started in recruitment at about the same time. And one of the accounts he was working on was Hertz, and they were looking for a corporate recruiter, contract to hire. And so he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know you've been with Aerotek for about 8 months. Would you be interested in potentially looking at this?" And I was making $32,000 a year at Aerotek, and I was like, "Yeah, anything that pays more than this, let's take a look."
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. And so I took the chance, and people the people at Hertz loved me, and within 6 months I was brought on full time. It was actually less than 6 months. I think it was about 90 days. But yeah, that's how it all started. I would say that that's not a common scenario for someone at that level of experience, but again, that just goes back to your network being such a valuable part of what we do.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I didn't even know anyone else in recruiting at the time. I didn't even know how you had new people outside of recruiting. So good for you, dude. I like looking back, man. I was in that bubble for. I felt like at least the first 3 years strong at Aerotek because I didn't know any better. And look, I had a great manager and the person whose role I backfilled, had promoted, ended up being one of my best friends, was in my wedding. So it was like I finally got that career foothold. And I think it was better for me to not know what else was out there. Like I needed 5 years of just like,
Yeah.
I would say pain because it wasn't all pain, but of like, I'm doing it like the hard way. Like to your point, like it is the hardest way. And then you do start to appreciate kind of your next stops, what you had, and what you were trained for. So, what was the transition like going from agency to internal?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially, like most people who transition from internal or external to internal, you think, "Oh man, this is so much cushier. This is so much easier," right?
Yeah,
As far as it felt a lot less aggressive, a lot less fast paced. But that was really that was a bit premature on my part because I think you're looking at things from just a pure recruitment standpoint. I think one of the biggest learning curves for people moving from external to internal is that talent acquisition is a lot more than just pure recruitment, right? I mean, when you're external, you're focused on butts and seats, closing recs, working closest to the dollar, all that stuff. When you move in-house, it becomes a lot more strategic, and you're looking at things from a much higher level. You have to consider stakeholder management a lot more when it comes to building relationships with hiring managers. You have to really understand regional recruitment, build regional pipelines, know who are our community partners that potentially can bring us candidates, right? Or that we can attend their events and we can get interest in different ways. You have to really get creative about attracting talent in markets where there's a lot of competition, or your compensation is at the bottom, or maybe is competitive with other companies in the same space. So there's just a lot more that you have to think about holistically outside of just how do I get people set up for interviews? How do I get offers closed? All of that is still in play, but you have to think about things like a true business partner. And so I would say that was something that I had to learn, and that was actually something that I was coached on pretty early. Is one of my early recruitment managers told me, look, you're super aggressive. And I always thought that was a good thing in the agency space, right? Because you drive things forward. You're not afraid to reach out, but you have to learn a little bit of nuance and a little bit of balancing and a little bit of EQ, right? And understand that things don't always progress as quickly as you want them to on the in-house side. So you have to know how to manage that process, still drive results in a good under a good timeline, but also know when to press in and when to back off. And so I would say the EQ and just really learning talent acquisition versus pure recruitment was the biggest learning curve.
I would argue, I love that you brought that up. Keely Flood, who runs a sales call on program every week, brought it up yesterday of just like the high IQ and high EQ, excuse me, and how important that is in recruiting. And that is not exclusive to agency recruiting. I mean, that is
Yep.
the most productive recruiters in general, internal or external, both have that high EQ, and you have to have it, right? And dealing with
Mm-hmm.
candidates and clients and hiring managers and understanding a cadence, and it's a big concept that recruiters come in the program, and it's some of them struggle to adapt to, because everything about my approach almost requires you to have a high EQ and to manage that relation and that cadence and kind of know that, like, the pace at which not only should you go at, but really your prospects, your candidates can handle you going at. And some of
Mm-hmm.
that you're testing, there's some of the communication, the message, you're testing the urgency of the client and candidate. And sometimes a lot of that, I think the number one thing, right, is you give people the out, right? Instead of being aggressive and trying to push people into something, you talk them out of it. I think that was one of the biggest first lessons I learned in really
Yep.
unleashing like EQ in
Mm-hmm.
recruiting, is talking people out of their job. And it sounds like you got to do just as much of that internally, if not more, on
Yeah.
that piece, and even navigate to the hiring managers, because it can be pretty easy for you just to kind of hire someone, one or two interviews and done internal, when you almost don't have that friction that an agency recruiter does.
Yeah, you have to be much more diplomatic, I would say. Like, I think that's probably the
Yeah.
word that comes to mind. Is you have to operate with the like underlying tenacity and grit that you need as an external recruiter, but you have to be much more of a laid back strategic business partner. Maybe laid back isn't the right term, but a strategic, long term thinking business partner when you're working with these hiring managers. Which I think in general, working with hiring managers it causes a lot of growing pains, no matter how great of a recruiter you are, because there are other people, right? And they maybe don't prioritize recruiting and filling roles as urgently as you do. And so you still
Yeah.
have to influence them and show them why it's important to do what we do and to follow process and all of that stuff. But you have to have a much longer term view and perspective and approach when working with them and building relationships.
Yeah. It's so, how does that, I'm going to play dumb as someone that's never actually been a corporate recruiter. I've consulted companies and I've worked with internal recruiters, but never really I never had the day-to-day title. Is so something that comes up often. I mean, let's say compensation, right? Say a
Yep.
role, or a job's title, especially now in the last few years, maybe compensation has been driven by remote work or back in person, or inflation, and compensations have gone up for certain roles. Like, how do you handle that internally? Like, when you kind of realize, hey, we're not, this isn't a market competitive opening the way we have it. What's
Mm-hmm.
that process like to go about doing something about it?
Yeah, so a good process to follow in any good organization with a, I don't even want to say a mature HR team, but a competent HR team will start a process with benchmarking, right? So it starts with, collecting and understanding the job description, understanding what the hiring manager is looking for, what they want to hire for. Usually they have some sort of idea in their head. We need to bring, the idea to paper. Once you have that, then there's all kinds of benchmarking, pay benchmarking tools that you can use. Pave, that's the one we use currently. But essentially, you can go in there and you can run data based off of, okay, here's what I'm understanding this job description to be. Here's the level of experience that we need. Determining where are you evaluating compensation? Is it, what market is it? Is it Bay Area? Is it in Texas? Is it global? Like whatever it may be, you set those parameters, and basically you set these parameters to gather some baseline data on what should somebody at this level, experience level, with this skill set, this title, in this region be making, right? You need to start there. I really do believe you should start there, because if you're just kind of guessing, or you're basing it off of, oh, here's what people in my network are telling me, or here's what my buddy told me over beers, like that's okay. That gives you some signal, but that's not always a good indicator, because as we know, people have inflated job titles. Somebody can be brought in at a much higher salary than they should just because they were recruited and headhunted, and so it doesn't really give you a good indication of the market. And that's really what you're doing with benchmarking, is getting a pulse on what is the market average here, right? Once you determine that, then you can really start to strategize. Where are we benchmarked at? Do we want to pay against that benchmark? Do we want to go higher? Do we need to go a little bit lower based off the budget? Really setting those kind of that understanding between, and again, really this is led by HR and talent acquisition. Usually you don't, rely on the hiring managers to make the decision unless they need to be consulted, or they need to approve it with the budget. So, that's where it all starts, and that's where it should start. That gives you a good indicator of market when it comes to compensation. Now, as we move into the recruitment process, what tends to happen is, we'll go live with the role. We start posting it. We start having conversations, and we realize, hey, this we're talking to the right people, but they're making about 20 to 30K more in salary on average, for this experience level with these parameters that we have set. Once you have that data, then you can bring that back and say, hey, here's what the market's telling us, right? We're getting the right quality of candidate, but the compensation level is off, and we need to make adjustments. And so that there's that kind of massaging that needs to happen. There's a bit of nuance that needs to happen in that process. But I do believe you should start with a baseline, and a data-backed baseline, so that that can inform your decision making. That can be the starting point, and then you can always tweak and alter based off what the market is telling you from there.
I, I love that. I mean, it's a very articulate breakdown of it and of the process. What happens if some of that data is like 20 to 30K more, and that's more than the manager is making for the role, or the rest of the department for the same role potentially? Like, what do you do when there's like conflict like that? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few solutions, right? And I think this is conversations that external recruiters sometimes have to have with stakeholders too. I call it the
Yep.
come to Jesus moment, right? Like, okay, we either need to adjust the job description and the experience level that we're looking for, and we need to give up something in that regard. I know we were looking for a senior lead with 7 to 10 years of experience. Maybe we need to bring in an up and comer with 3 to 5 years of experience, but somebody that we believe can be molded into this role and grow into this role, right? That's one option. The other option is, if we have budget flexibility, well, we might need to open up the checkbook a little bit, and it may require us to go to the CFO. It may require us to make a strong business case for it, but that might be a worthwhile investment for the business if we can see where this person can impact the business, better over the next 5 to 10 years. And then, it might require completely redesigning the job description, right? It might say, okay, we thought this is what we were looking for. Clearly we're off here. Clearly, we're not able to afford this quality or this caliber of candidate. Let's reimagine this a little bit, and let's maybe, readjust, shuffle the cards, and figure out, okay, don't need this person to do 3 to 4 of these key things. Maybe we just need a specialist in this one area, and then we can, kind of teach them the rest. So there's different approaches to it. It really just comes down to team need, team evaluation. What does that hiring manager truly need? What are the big objectives that this person needs to be able to accomplish? And then you can just kind of work backwards from there.
Yeah, I mean, what comes across is just like how much, number one, how much work and thoughtfulness there is to do this right, even from especially from the internal side. This a lot of our listeners, I think, our agency recruiters have definitely getting more of a corporate and internal recruiter audience as well. So I think
Mm-hmm.
this is such a great breakdown on the ideal way to do it. Right, if you're internal, I mean, you're definitely setting the playbook for that for the industry. But external, and I know you mentioned you've worked with some recruiters, right? And maybe even, or,
Mm-hmm.
and this is not an invitation for anyone to reach out to Andrew and solicit business. People already do that to him all the time. So please don't do that. But what's it like being internal and working with external agencies? Like, how did that change your perspective when that started happening? And how did you kind of work with them on some of these issues if they would come up?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for me, it's changed my perspective because as you know from my background, or if you don't know my background and you're listening to this, just go look at my LinkedIn profile. You'll see I literally have hopped between internal and external for the past 9 years or so. I love both. I think there's extreme value in both, and so I've gone back and forth between both sides. And at this point where I'm at now in my career, having run a staffing agency, having worked for a big staffing agency, but also worked for different size corporations and now in the startup space, I just realized how educated you need to be as a recruiter, beyond just knowing the how-tos of recruiting. You really need to know what's going to add value to the business and know how to be a true strategic advisor to organizations, in your market, in your industry, when it comes to compensation, when it comes to interview processes, when it comes to closing and negotiating, whatever it may be, you need to be a true market expert. And, I'll be frank. I talk to a lot of recruiters, both internal and external, and I just think there's a massive skill gap, specifically on the agency side. I think, agency recruiters are great at being aggressive. They're great. They're taught how to develop business. They're taught even how to just source well and get candidates in the pipeline. But I think where they lack knowledge and expertise, and it's not their own fault. A lot of it is if you're not exposed to internal recruiting, or internal processes, you don't understand this. They lack, going back to that EQ and that ability to really partner with hiring managers and to understand pain points, right, and to solve for those pain points. You hear it all the time. I mean, you see it just like I do on LinkedIn. Everybody that's on the agency side is complaining about how long companies take, and the changes, and you submitted 50 candidates, and the 4 of them got to final, and then they wanted to restart the search, and everybody complains about that, but nobody asks why did that happen, and is there perhaps a deeper issue there, or something that was missing from your side as the advisor and the driver of that process. And so for me, this is something that I look for when I work with agencies. I get hit up by them all the time. I know a lot of great agency recruiters, but yet I'm very picky about the ones that I will have on my short list, because to me, there's so many factors that go into this beyond just like knowing how to recruit. It's industry knowledge, market dynamics, how great of a strategic communicator and business partner are they. If I were to bring them in and have them sit with my CTO and my senior director of engineering, are they going to walk away confident that this person can deliver on these recs that that we need filled, in South America or Europe or any of these places? So there's so many things that I put into the mix when I'm considering who to partner with, and I think there's a lot of area of opportunity for agency partners. If there's one takeaway that I could leave with people, it's focus on being a true value add and a true strategic advisor outside of just the how tos of recruitment. That's great that you are a Boolean expert. It's great that you can create a pipeline in 5 to 10 days. That's great, but what about the rest of it, right? And what about like figuring out what's actually valuable and needed with your stakeholders? That's probably what's most important.
I mean, that's a masterclass for agency recruiters listening for just the last 15 minutes on how to approach internal. I mean, you could even flip that, right? If I'm a recruiter talking to you, I'm like, oh, this guy's got his stuff together. Like this is a great client potential. There's a recruiter that gets it on the internal. Like, I'm going to love working in this process. But to your point, you only get that if you've proven yourself to be a value add. So you can always control focusing on being a value add, how to display that. We'll talk about content marketing because that's a brilliant
Mm-hmm.
way to display that you actually have value to add. And I know that's something both you and I are passionate about and do daily. I mean, it's just a brilliant breakdown, and that, yeah, that EQ. And if you're wondering what that is, go look it up, research it, study it, get better at it. It makes all the difference. And the most fulfilled, the best, most productive recruiters I know all have it. They all work hard, but they're not working as hard as you might think because they can
Mm-hmm.
leverage EQ and the marketing and everything else, right? They
Yep.
know which levers to push and pull at the right time. So it's a wonderful breakdown, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Thank
But
you.
let's talk about you. You're at Hertz, then you go and build up a firm and a branch with Express Appointment. How did that come to be, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I spent about 3.5 years at Hertz running their Southwest regional division, and what that means is all the branches that you see for these car rental companies, on the side of the street. I was managing all the hiring
Yeah,
for for those branches in like five different states. So super high volume, incredibly difficult to reach metrics, but I was able to make it work. And I actually had, you don't see this if you look at my profile, but I had taken a few months after I decided to leave Hertz to try to work as kind of a freelance recruiter full time. I had been partnering with an incredible recruiter that many of your followers probably know, Brent Orsuga, based out of here in Scottsdale. And Brent and I had partnered together for a few years behind the scenes, and he gave me the opportunity to come on and join him, and I did that for a few months. But ultimately, at that time, it was just, the economics of it didn't make sense. And my wife was running a new business. Cash was lean. So I said, all right, I got to go back to the corporate world. And so I was kind of back on the hunt again. And this same friend, shout out Tim Young, he's the same recruiter who placed me at Hertz. He had moved to Express Employment Professionals. He started and actually now owns the Express Employment Professionals in Tempe, Arizona. And he said, "Hey, look, we're looking to open a few more branches. I think you should come look at opening one." And I said, "Dude, I haven't worked in staffing since 2016, or 2015." I was like, I'm out of the game. And he's like, you can do this. You can do this. And so, long story short, ended up having conversations with them and saw it as a huge opportunity. It was actually a operator to owner type situation. That was kind of the goal: is you build out the branch, get it profitable, and then buy in as an owner. So I saw it as a great opportunity to cut my teeth on the entrepreneurial side as well. And so yeah, in July 2019, we broke ground on our branch in Scottsdale. We went live in December, and yeah, got it to just under 2 million in billings in before I left in 2021.
nice. I mean, that's you really went through it all in the first few years. I mean, you covered everything that you could in the same amount of time that I think I just spent at Aerotek, which is cool. I mean, and I could see how you put all these pieces together and leveraging what you're doing now, and it's cool to kind of just see that in the journey. Which I'm sure when you were in it, you couldn't have imagined 4 to 5 years later.
Right.
Now, like that, this happens. Like, wait, I'm known on LinkedIn and have an audience here and working internal. What what was some of the differences of building it up on your own or building a branch up versus smaller and more entrepreneurial versus Aerotech? Like, what were some of the differences you saw there?
Yeah, I think probably the most palpable one was branding, right? I mean, Express is a pretty well known staffing agency brand, but because they're franchise driven, they don't have quite the market share or the awareness in the market as an Aerotech does. So it's a little bit different when you reach out to somebody as an Aerotech recruiter because they probably have heard of you in some regard. At Express, it was like, hey, we have 700 plus locations across the country, but you may have never heard of us before, right? And so even from a
Yeah.
business development standpoint, from a recruitment standpoint, we really had to gain a lot of trust in the market. That was my first time doing pure to business development as well. And, there was some challenges with the franchise model, basically being I had to sell in a certain area. So I had to go out there. We were doing a lot of door to door. I was doing, business to business, door to door selling, outside sales,
Yeah.
mixing it in with inside sales, email marketing. But I would, I had to hire recruiters to run internal, to basically bring candidates into our pipeline so that I could go out there and just try to close deals. So that was a learning curve for me. I had to go out there and actually go and sell and, create create a true value proposition. And it was great. The other thing that was a big challenge that was unforeseen was we got hit with COVID 3 months into opening this branch. And so, we were at that point, we had about 15 clients. We were billing, I don't know, 6 to 7 grand a week. In I know Aerotek calls it spread, whatever, gross profit margin. And we lost pretty much all of those clients overnight. Maybe not. I wouldn't say we
Wow.
lost them, but everybody went on a freeze. All of our projects got shut down, and so we went from in a week. I went from 13 billing clients to 3 billing clients, right? And then the next several months was just us doing business development, knowing that we weren't going to close any business right then, but we had to be the person that was out there building relationships, talking with people. We were sending care packages and care baskets to businesses, just trying to do anything we can, one, to help, right? Because it was a stressful time, but two, also to say, hey, we're a trusted market partner. Whenever you're ready to get going again, we're here for you. And that actually benefited our business incredibly, because around, I don't know, maybe July of that year, July 2020, people started to hire again here in Arizona, and we got incredibly busy for that next 6 to 9 months.
It's such a good lesson of even this time, because I know this market, especially on the recruiting side in general, but agency recruiting has been tough this year. And doubling down on those relationship building, rapport building efforts, especially when people don't have what you want, what you hope that they can offer you, they don't have that right
Yep.
in the moment. And you still do something like that is memorable. It's impactful. It's an opportunity to do something, and it doesn't always have to be when the craziest world event of this century occurs. It could be just with the market stuff where you think of them and you send them something their way, and just appreciate the fact that you just know them and you have done work with
Yep.
them in the past. And gratitude is something that's come up a lot this week, and gratitude is a hell of a business development strategy. And being able to show that and display that. So I love that, and that it
Yeah.
came back around. It sounds like 5-10 fold,
Hmm.
because the market always swings back. And if it doesn't, then you know what, you and I, we got a whole lot, bunch of other problems to worry about if it never swings back,
Correct.
beyond just this. So you just got to kind of have faith and assume it's going to bounce back, because it
Hmm.
has for a long time, until it just doesn't. But then, as I said, that's a whole other bag of problems.
Right. No, you're exactly right, and I think that's the problem, and it's a reasonable problem that people face in recruitment, because so many of us are asked to produce results quickly, and so we're focused on the now. We're focused on filling this rec. We're focused on what can this person do for me now. Uh, I have a long time ago, I adapted the mentality of I'm going to start helping people and not expect anything in return. And a lot of that was tied to my own hurt, from people having expectations of people, and watching them not come through for me. So it was a bit of a defense mechanism, but I actually think it's been an incredible, useful tool for me in recruitment, because a lot of it ties to even the work I'm doing on LinkedIn. I, for the past 2.5 years, have just met with anybody that reached out to me, not anybody, but for the most part, people, when they reach out to me in the industry, recruiters, people that need advice in their job search, whatever it may be. I'm always willing to hop on a quick call and offer any kind of guidance or any kind of advice that I can. And I don't ever expect anybody to return that favor. I think for me, I feel like I'm in a much better mental place when I can just say, hey, look, this is me giving back, with my knowledge and my expertise. And, I believe in reciprocity. And I think those things will come back in different ways down the road. And so I think if you're a recruiter and you can adopt that mindset, and I know it's incredibly difficult to do, especially if you're on the agency side and you have crazy metrics and you have, recruiting managers and owners and hiring managers breathing down your neck. But if you can just adopt the mentality of saying, I'm going to help no matter what. I think you'll be in a lot better place mentally, and I actually think you'll produce better results in the long term as well.
Well, I think that's. I mean, I love that. I think a lot of us are in this because of that. We figured it out. Probably we got hurt, and it is a defense mechanism. And then you maybe overdo it and help too many people for free. And like, wait, at some point I got to make money, and you got to kind
Yeah.
of find that balance of like, what can
Yeah.
my calendar realistically look like with stuff like that. And I have a hunch that maybe where some of this content journey started. Is there a correlation there with getting some of your thoughts out there to try to help more people that maybe you can't be on a phone with everyone? Or is it just completely separate and you're like, no, I just started because I felt like I just needed to start creating content?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think for me, it was like I wanted to create a resource that I never had. I wanted to share thoughts in a way that, it was almost like a diary of sorts, but it was also like
Yeah.
maybe somebody can find this helpful, right? Because hopefully I don't come across when I create content like I have all the answers. It's literally me just forming thoughts around a certain idea and saying like, this is my perspective on it. This is what I've experienced. And I'm open to being wrong. Let's have a discussion about it. But that's really what I wanted to create as I shared content, was just like, maybe I could help people with my own, these own questions that I'm answering in real time. Maybe I can use my previous experiences to maybe help and inspire someone else that's, is 3 or 4 steps behind me in their career. And at the same time, it's a bit therapeutic for me, right? To be able to I'm a thinker. I'm somebody that sits and analyzes things and like thinks about concepts. And so it's helpful for me to put pen to paper. And I'm actually a big believer now that I've created a lot of content that writing actually makes me a better recruiter, because it helps me really formalize all the jumble that's up here. And when I can clarify, if I have a certain idea or a new strategy to cold outreach or to employer branding or any of these big topics, and I can put that pen to paper and actually map it out, that actually gives me a lot of ammo, right? To be creative and try new things as a recruitment professional. So just a quick shout out to those that are potentially looking at creating content. Do it, because it actually, I think, make you sharper as a recruiter and a lot more well-rounded in how you think.
Well said. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me, having read your content for a couple of years, I think before we recorded this podcast, before we finally got on a call and just met, is just how articulate you are in your writing, and it obviously shows and get it in talking to you. You're the same way talking to you on this or on a call that we had before. Is just, and that's super helpful for the industry because there's a lot of buzzwords in recruiting because people don't really know what it is or how to explain
Yep.
it. So we need more voices like you that and look, big ideas, the hardest thing to do is to simplify them and to write them in a way that's simplified. Someone that doesn't know what they're reading can't get it. And kudos to you, because I think you knocked that out of the park. It's why you built the following.
Mm.
It's why your stuff does so well, because you're the ultimate like translator, I think, for the industry, for
Mm.
internal and corporate. It's just like, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. I just find myself nodding to your post. I'm
Mm.
like, great. Like, I wish I could write that simply. I don't. I think my battle is like, my thoughts, I just write. Like it's
Mm.
like I filibuster my own content, and I've had to like work on like parsing it down. And so I'm envious of people like you that can just like make it look so clean and simple. I'm like, how do you do that, right? And I lean into my own strengths. I think sometimes it is just. I think building authenticity is key, is it important,
Yeah.
right? And so I hear why your content comes out that way. And I'm going to ask a question. Hopefully, I haven't. If we can come back to this if we need to, but like one of the things you say, you post all the time, you create all the time, and yet you're crazy effective and crazy good at your current job. A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
pushback I get is, how am I supposed to recruit and write? And
Yep.
what's the value? What's the purpose? Like, why should I prioritize writing the first thing every day before I get into my quote unquote day job?
Yeah, I think we have to go through a bit of a mind reframe when it comes to content, because I totally understand that perspective. There's times I'm talking to myself and I'm like, Andrew, why did you sign up to do all this stuff? You don't have time. But what you find over time is everything becomes easier. It's any skill, right? You do it over time. You get 1,000 at bats with it. It just becomes second nature. I never took a writing course. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that sell these things on LinkedIn where, you go and you learn how to write posts and you go and look and everyone's got the same template, right? And But for me, I'm like, it never resonated with me. I was like, I'm just gonna write how I talk, or how I think I talk, right? I'm gonna write in the way that I think like makes sense to me as I'm unpacking the idea. Fortunately, it's resonated with people, and I appreciate that feedback that you shared. But I think you have to just get in the habit. You have to build a muscle of creating content. What I do for me personally, I don't do anything intricate or anything super sophisticated. I have a notepad on my phone, and I just it's a brain dump of ideas. If I Sometimes it's a keyword, right? Maybe it's someone mentions a certain concept or a certain topic. I'll hear something in a podcast, and I'm like, I want to write a piece of content about that. So I'll just jot down the idea. I'll jot down the word, and then I'll go back later and then just craft a post around that word or that idea or that concept. So it does take a little bit of practice to, and maybe that doesn't make sense for you. Maybe in your head, you're like, that's super unorganized. I would never do that. You have to kind of find the path that works for you. For me, it works because I have this like evergreen list of ideas. I can just go back through and say, I feel like talking about this today. I'm just going to create an idea around this. Sometimes it's an example. Like, I think the easiest piece of content to create is something that's happening to you in real time, right? Something that you're experiencing. Someone no call, no showed you, right? A hiring manager, took you through 6 months of interviews and then ghosted you, whatever it may be. If you have examples to share, or wins to share, or learning lessons to share, that's the easiest content to create. And quite frankly, that's the content that resonates usually best with a lot of people, because it's relatable. But I think, to your point, it becomes easier over time because you create this flywheel effect with content, right? And you create this own kind of system for yourself. You learn how to fit it into your day. For me, I'm like, I know now how much time it's going to take me, how much time I need to invest to write out a full post. So I'll either do it the night before and I'll schedule it on LinkedIn, or I know that I need to get up in the morning before my daughter wakes up and before I'm getting, ready for everything. And I need to put that idea together, and then just hit click and on post whenever I'm able to. I don't follow a certain formula about like when I post in the day. I just will kind of post when I can. But I think you just have to kind of get into a rhythm. You have to build that muscle for yourself, and it really does become easier. I know people say that. I know there's, people scoff at it, but it really does become easier. It becomes a bit of an art form.
I mean, you could be the content coach in our program. I mean, everything you talked about is the principles that we teach, that we guide, even from the ideas and how to bring those ideas to life. And we're there as a resource to edit and review and push and give feedback and help people build that muscle. All the principles that you just said is exactly how we look at it and how we teach it, because it's there, and just the benefits of the long term of just staying with it. I was showing people last week on our content call my journey, the first 9 months of posting on content in 2022 on LinkedIn, and there was a couple that got 30 likes and 70. I had a string like a 3 weeks. I was like, one post got above 10 likes. And I was posting 5 days a week. I was like 1 and 4 and 8, and then 3
Yeah.
and then 1. I mean, it was just like, and I was just like, I was like, I don't care. Like, I was just like, I don't
Yep.
care. I'm writing to build the muscle, to get the feedback, to kind of, if one got 9 likes and one got 2, like, what's the difference? And, if I do like a personal one, that's an easy way to get a lot of likes, but probably not a lot of leads, or maybe some leads because people are like, oh, I didn't realize you're an actual human. I love this story. Like, tell me more about what you do. So I'm like, okay, sometimes
Yeah.
personal can get leads. But then it was really the like, hey, here's my experience with automation. And at that time, people are like, wait, this is sweet. Like, teach me automation. I'm like, I'd be happy to. Like, I think it's also sweet, and like it kind of built the business that way. People are interested in what you're working on.
Yeah.
You connect with the people in your audience and all that stuff, and just kind of share. And I think, to your point, it's not in your brain, it's just out there. And it's not like I was, I used the line a couple weeks ago, like, I'm not trying to treat LinkedIn as my therapist. I don't need that. But it's just like,
Right.
people are interested in journeys and
Yep.
work journeys and content and sharing. And there's a courage that it does take to post on social media. And you can scoff at that or laugh at that all you want, but it does, because
Mhm.
you're out there, more so than we ever have been before. So to your point, yeah, building that muscle and doing that, man, the rewards of just putting yourself out there in a way that resonates with your market, it's, I mean, you're a testament to that, man. We both are. You
Yeah.
definitely are. You have more than double the followers I have, so you're really resonating with people. And that's like, and you and I joke. You and I are we both know followers is not exactly doesn't tell the whole story. But
Yep.
I guess what I'll end with is, what has it done for you since you started posting? You're where you're at now. What are some of the positive benefits that you've experienced from it?
Yeah, well, I was going to mention, hearing you share your perspective on it, that I think the biggest thing it does for you is it creates or amplifies your voice. And that's really what you need, especially if you're an agency recruiter and you're trying to drive business. You need your voice to stand out in the market. You've got a sea of other agency recruiters that all claim that they can, solve everyone's hiring problems, and maybe they're working in the same industries as you. But what's going to be the thing that separates you? It's you, right? And it's your perspective, it's your voice. Maybe it's your expertise that shines through from the content that you share. But that's probably the biggest benefit as you get more reps and you do this stuff, is you create a voice. I think, you know, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this as someone who listens or reads my content, but you can probably see my post without seeing my face and be like, I think this is probably Andrew posting, and that's kind of what I go for. Or like, even to your point, if people come to me and say, you're the same person that you are in real life, that you are, how you portray yourself in your content, to me, that's a win, because I'm all about authenticity and just showing up as me. So I think that's the number one thing, is you just create immense amount of trust and validation in the market, along with awareness, which is obviously really important. I think it does lead to unique opportunities. I've been invited to speak at events. I'm speaking at one next week, a talent acquisition conference. I've been on plenty of podcasts. I have been asked. I have certain business partners now that will ask me to host events and do live events and things like that. And, they'll pay me for that. I've had sponsors. I've been fortunate enough to start Talent Operator as a newsletter, and, we're still kind of getting things going there, but it's been an incredible experience just to get people's feedback and see, yeah, some things are resonating. There's some things that I could, be doing better, but all of it is just incredible, like, feedback, and it creates this whole mechanism of you being able to improve yourself as a recruiter, right? Whether that's through sharpening skills. I have to learn how to be an incredible speaker and presenter, if I'm doing these things. I also have to know how to convey content in a way that's digestible, but also impactful. If I'm going to write a weekly newsletter, I have to know how to generate ideas that are much deeper than posts and make it worth people's time, if they're reading it every week. So all of these, it does produce new skills in you, but it does open you up to a world of new opportunity as well. And I think, for your audience, those that run businesses or are trying to, improve their businesses or grow their businesses through social media content, I mean, that's the number one thing it does, is it just creates more awareness, more validation, deeper trust with the people that you need to build trust with. Because at the end of the day, recruitment is a trust and a relationship game. If you don't have that, you're not going to have orders. You're not going to have a business.
I mean, just this whole podcast is a master. I knew it would be a master class. I can't agree. I couldn't agree any more, dude. What I've learned about myself the last 3 years, and what I've learned just in general about
Mm-hmm.
people and business, and the confidence, I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, I started this when I was 21. How old was I? 34. I had been working 12 years, 13 years in my career. I mean, it doesn't even
Mm-hmm.
compare. And it's just from making a dumb post on LinkedIn every day, the
Yep.
different variations, and not really caring, because I knew some of the things had to be told and said out loud. And then from that, I learned way more of what was really going on, and
Mm-hmm.
just in the whole industry, and the confidence. And now when I try to recruit, or it's like it's a piece of cake. Things that I
Yeah.
thought were hard 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago are nothing to me
Yeah.
now. And now I'm dealing with stuff that it's like, oh wait, this is really hard. you know
Yeah.
is the question, do I want to scale? How do you scale? And then, do I want to scale? That's a question I never thought I'd be asking myself,
Yeah.
right? Because you try to get to something that you could scale, and you're like, wait, do I need to do that right now? And then even
Right.
advising people the same way, and like, you say you want to scale, but what does that mean? What are you doing right now? What does that look like? And there's so
Yeah.
many questions that it's like, like, oh, I want $1 million, and then it's like you get $1 million, like, well, I want a million more, right? It's just like the kind of like it feeds itself, and all I'm saying all that because it all came from marketing. It all
Hmm.
came from content marketing and just the growth and the revenue. And I built this agency because of the coaching. I had clients
Yeah.
ask me for help with recruiting, and then I partnered up with one of my clients to build this agency. Now we do partnerships. We have our own clients, and now we're implementing stuff with Clay and AI data enrichment and like building out email campaign. And it's made the coaching way better because I was coaching things I knew, automation and content, but now even more I can coach from what I learned at Aerotek, but also now what I learned on my own and building up my
Yeah.
own agency and really living through an abundance mindset because not everyone sees what I do and wants to partner with me. Oh, he's going to take my clients. I don't give a shit
Yeah.
about your clients. Excuse my friends. That was my own podcast. I can swear. But like, like, you know what I mean? It's like even more it drives, like it attracts your tribe. And man, it's been so rewarding to see who has become part of that the last 3 years and people that I'll know the rest of my life
Yeah.
because of that. Um,
Well, and
oh, it's so valuable. Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, it exposes you too. And I think that's why a lot of people resist content creation because whether they know it at that time or
Mhm.
not, but it forces you to put yourself out there, which is level one, right? Like, and some people struggle with just that part. But it also, if you're going to be a thought leader and if you're a recruiter in a certain industry and you want to attract hiring managers and clients in a space, what do you have to be? You have to be the go-to thought leader and the subject matter expert in that space. And so content creation forces you to expose your knowledge and to expose what you actually know or don't know potentially. And it does open you up to criticism. It opens you up to potentially flopping on some content or saying the wrong thing, rubbing someone the wrong way. These are all things that, I get why people resist them and why people don't want to do them. But the reality is, if you want top tier results in an industry that requires you to be a face and a trusted partner and a relationship builder, then you have to be willing to expose yourself and put yourself out there if you're going to grow and become that level of person that you need to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I knew how flawed I was going into posting on LinkedIn. So I was like, yeah, I know I'm flawed. I got many of them. Like, we could sit here all day if we want to count them. So I'm going to
Yep.
post anyway. Like, again, I'm someone
Right.
that's hit rock bottom, not once, but twice. It was like, okay, I mean, it's just LinkedIn. I didn't take it too seriously. I didn't take myself too seriously. But I take my work and what I'm striving in my vision seriously. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to portray. And that's how I've communicated and coached my clients is like, that's the balance that you have to find. And you're gonna learn that. You're gonna learn not to talk in absolutes and everything
Yeah.
else because you have to give that room for nuance. But some people want to be polarizing and talk in absolutes. Like, that's great. For me, it was a waste of energy and a waste of time dealing in the comments. And
Yeah.
I have a certain way of going about it that maybe someone posting at a company at internal at worldly when you aren't on your own, and or at an Aerotech maybe they can't say and do things that I can do, so that can affect your content strategy. But recruiting and hiring, you don't have to be polarizing to be
No.
effective because the
Mm-mm.
problems are 101 to us. People are making them every day, all day. They will always make them as long as people and hiring exist in our society. So you can, as you say, you can just share your experiences in a very PG manner and be
Yeah.
extremely effective. Like, you don't have to be crazy polarizing. You don't have to
Yeah.
talk about the election or anything else, or what your favorite news network is, or different things. Like, you can just talk straight up hiring problems because God knows there's enough problems there to last us
Yeah.
100 lifetimes. So, like, if
Mm-hmm.
that kind of helps just kind of get you started, if you're listening to this, like, it doesn't take much to be interesting or entertaining or to get inbound
Yep.
leads.
That's right. Well, and then, on the agency side, you and I both know it only takes a handful of clients to potentially build a really incredible business, right? And so, just keeping that perspective in mind. It's not necessarily about getting thousands of followers. It's about maybe 10 to 15 really great relationships that are value adding and, can reproduce into other things and spawn into other partnerships and relationships, right? So having that long-term view is always important.
Absolutely. Being a micro influencer, right? How can you really impact 100 people in your network or 1,000 people, not necessarily a million, is so key. So again,
Yep.
well said. So we'll finish up with this. What is next for you? I know you're at Worldly Down. It sounds like you got a great thing going there. You're building the talent operator. What's the vision behind talent operator? Where you see this going? What do you got there?
Yeah, talent operator really was meant and was created as a resource, right? Again, I highlight wanting to create something that I didn't really find in the market or really have. I know there's people that have newsletters and have podcasts, and I've benefited from those, but I really wanted to create a tactical resource for people. And ironically, some of the content I've shared is a little more strategic than it is tactical, but really the goal is to just get in deep with certain topics and really help people understand the complexities of recruiting a little bit easier, because as you know, and as we touched on earlier, no one goes to school to be a recruiter. No one, like, there's no formal learning. I know you teach people a process and a framework for success, but at the end of the day, a lot of this is we're learning as we go. And so I really just want to help create a little bit more of a formalized mechanism for people to be able to learn some of these more complicated topics that I've encountered and I had to learn, through plain experience. And so that's really the goal of it, is really just a tactical resource for people. They get it every Saturday morning. They can sit down with their coffee, read through it, and be like, "Oh man, that was interesting. Hopefully, I can walk away with something, a new perspective or a new way of approaching things." So that's the goal. I mean, I really don't have anything crazy beyond that. I really just want to keep growing it. Hopefully, more people find value in it and keep joining.
I love it. Well, it's definitely helped me and made me think even just how to improve writing my newsletter, and also just some of the topics. I mean, the ATS breakdown that you had was great. So, dude, congrats on the success. I mean, you're super articulate, a wealth of knowledge, both for both sides of the operation, internal and external, and
Thank you.
even content creation. I think you probably inspired some people to start writing themselves. So, anything else that you want to leave the listeners with?
No, just I think just my message for those in the industry is keep learning, keep growing. That we're seeing the market and our profession evolve before our eyes. I think recruiting, it has fundamental principles that will always be in place, but there is a rise of technology and a wave of technology that's happening right now that is going to impact our space in some way. So don't bury your head in the sand. Keep learning, keep evolving, keep growing your skill set, knowing that ideally we want this technology to be used to make us better and more efficient and provide more value to our stakeholders. So don't be afraid of the technology. Just embrace it, learn it, apply it where you can, and just never move away from that learner mindset, because at the end of the day, that intense curiosity and that intense willingness to learn and to grow and continuously add to your skill set is going to be what sets you apart as a recruiter.
Well said as always. So, Andrew, appreciate it, man. Appreciate you coming on, sharing everything that you got. Super valuable. Guys, if you're listening, connect with Andrew on LinkedIn, follow him. We'll have the socials in the episode summary. Until next time, you see you, man.